So now I'm standing in front of a statue of probably the most famous and the most controversial mayor of Vienna. His name was Dr. Karl Lueger, and he was mayor of Vienna from 1897 to 1910. And the reason why he is controversial is that although he did many, many good things for the city of Vienna, including a lot of municipal projects that created the infrastructure that we still use today for water and gas and electricity and transportation, he was also a very famous anti-Semite. And when he served in the Imperial Assembly, he actually advocated racist policies against minority groups in the empire. And he used anti-Semitic rhetoric as a way of appealing to working class Viennese people who felt threatened by foreign competition, and particularly by Jewish competition. And Hitler admired Dr. Karl Lueger very much and talked about him very enthusiastically in his autobiography Mein Kampf. But the story about Karl Lueger is a lot more complicated than just he was a terrible anti-Semite and we should all hate him. Everybody, while he was mayor, including Jewish people, thought that he was a really nice, charming guy, and actually he was known as der schöne Karl, handsome Karl. And most people felt that his administration treated Jewish people very fairly and very decently. And he actually had Jewish friends. And when somebody asked him about that, he said, "I decide who is a Jew." And this sounds a little glib, but actually it's a really important characteristic of his anti-Semitic thinking, because Hitler was a racist anti-Semite. He believed that you were born a Jew by virtue of genetics, and no matter what you did, you could never change that. Whereas Dr. Karl Lueger was not a racist anti-Semite, he was a religious anti-Semite, and sort of a social anti-Semite. And so he believed that people could sort of leave their Jewishness behind, and then he was quite willing to accept them. And it's not like that is a really wonderful thing, but it is very different from the really, really virulent anti-Semitism that Hitler later brought to Austria. So the problem was that after World War II, what do you do with this statue and the name of this plaza, which is Dr. Karl Lueger Platz, and also the name of the part of the ring that is outside of the university, which is also called Dr. Karl Lueger Ring. Because after World War II, they were busy denazifying the street names in Vienna, and mostly they got rid of the names of the anti-Semites that the Nazis really loved, and they went around and they named all the streets after them. But Dr. Karl Lueger was a really different case because he was so popular and fundamentally had been quite decent in practice to the Jewish citizens of Vienna. So his name ended up getting left on this plaza. His statue stayed here, and the name Dr. Karl Lueger Ring stayed outside the university. So it was kept for this part of the street outside the university. And that was the case until 2012. And the reason for that was that there was an Austrian scientist, Erich Kandel, who won the Nobel Prize in 2000. And when he gave his acceptance speech, he said, "I'm not accepting this as an Austrian, I'm accepting this as an American Jew, because that's what I feel that I am." And the president of Austria called him after that, because of course it was a real sort of huge slap in the face to Austria for him to deny where he came from. And he said, "How can we make this right? This was horrible. How can we make this right?" And this guy said, "Well, the first thing you can do is you can change the name of Dr. Karl Lueger Ring, because it's really embarrassing that the area right outside the university is named for a famous anti-Semite." So there was a lot of debate about this for about a decade, and then in 2012 they did finally change the name of Dr. Karl Lueger Ring to simply Universitätsring, so the university ring. But this statue and this plaza is still named after him.